Are all of you able to see my screen? There is a mind map with the word crypto in the middle.
Yes.
Okay. So we keep talking about crypto regulations. So that is why it is important for us to understand that crypto is not one thing. So the government cannot say one law for it. They are of 11 different types. So the first kind of crypto is what we call as ready money, which means crypto which can be used like medium of exchange. And a classic example of this would be Bitcoin. Then there are others like Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, which come in, and they are supposed to be used only as a currency for payment for people. That is the only primary use case that they are doing. As we can see in Bitcoin, it has become legal tender in El Salvador, which means it can be used as ready money for transactions. Then we have something called the open blockchain tokens, which I explained to you that the state of Wyoming in the US is like one of the first in the world to define this concept called an open blockchain token. There are certain terms and conditions you need to satisfy. You need to then pay $1,000 as a fee, and then your crypto can be recognized as an open blockchain token as long as you're complying with those laws. So the project I'm working on, we are probably one of the first in the world who have applied and got that registration as an open blockchain token. Then we have a concept called hush coins or privacy coins. Classic example being Monero. Now, Bitcoin is not fully anonymous. A lot of people think transactions are anonymous. That's not true. Because what happens is when we look at Bitcoin transactions, we have the blockchain explorer. We discussed that, I think, in the first session, where you can see all the transactions, all the addresses of people and what transactions they have made right from the beginning of Bitcoin. But in privacy enhanced platforms like Monero, Decred, Zcash, the technology is very different. Even though it is a blockchain, you cannot see the transaction data. You don't know who, which address sent how much money to whom and when. So those are what we call as the hush coins or the privacy coins. Any questions so far? You can just put it into the chat. I will immediately answer that. Someone has already said something. Just give me a second. How is it possible with such a fluctuating value? So personally, I'm also very confused. How is it that with so much fluctuation, they are able to do it? I don't know really. So some people say that El Salvador is only doing this to, get more publicity as a country. Otherwise, most people don't even know about them. So they are doing all this so that people come to know about them. So I don't know whether on the ground people are actually using it or not. Okay, about the blockchain taking 6 blocks, that is only applicable when your transaction hits the blockchain. But if any of you have used a crypto exchange, have you realized that it does not take so much time? Is there anybody here who has used a crypto exchange and realized there it is happening very fast?
Yes, almost real time.
Exactly, because there they are not hitting the transaction on the blockchain. They are having internal liquidity pool. And when people who are customers of the same crypto exchange buy from each other and sell to each other, it is happening within the liquidity pool, and that transaction is only logged in the internal logs of the crypto exchange, not on the blockchain. And that is why it goes through instantly. So possibly even El Salvador is doing something like that, or El Salvador may be using the Lightning Network. And that is why they are able to do quick transactions, because I know it is happening in the McDonald's. I mean, friends of mine have told me that they can go to a McD and they can just order a burger and pay instantly using Bitcoin. So they're either using this internal liquidity pool or they are using the Lightning Network.
But Rojas, we don't really have anything to see that is really happening in El Salvador as well, right?
So my friends there have gone into a McDonald's and bought burgers using Bitcoin. So I know it is happening. Then there are ATMs. So I've seen photographs, they send me pictures. There are ATMs there. Government has bought and set up Bitcoin ATMs. So it is there. The only question is how much is it being used?
I personally think a lot of publicity purposes is behind that as well.
I would totally agree with you. While transactions are happening, I think they're very few. And from a publicity point of view, government is talking a lot. But again, we don't know for sure. Yeah. Then the next category we have is called an application coin. So suppose you have built a crypto for your particular use case. Then we call that as an application coin. Classic example would be Filecoin, which we have already spoken about. Theta. These are all cryptos built for a particular use case. So we call them application coins. And they are not used as normal currencies. They are only used to buy and sell services within that platform. So Filecoin is used only for buying and selling data storage. Theta is used only for the video streaming. It is not being used like a Bitcoin for other payments. Then we have security tokens, which are like equity shares. If you buy it, you are actually getting ownership of a company. And that is definitely regulated under the securities laws, which almost every country in the world has. Any questions? Okay. Then we have the non-fungible tokens, which is called NFTs. And again, obviously, they are a very, very popular kind of a token. So NFTs, I think one of the first was a concept called CryptoKitties. So these are virtual cats. Okay, they're not real, they're virtual cats. You can buy them. Then different cats can mate with each other and produce baby cats. And then the value of these CryptoKitties goes ups and down. There are some limited edition ones, some common ones. So those come under NFTs. That is how NFTs started. What do we see application tokens on exchanges? Yeah. Why do we see application token on exchanges is a good question. So suppose I want to buy or sell data storage and I'm going to use Filecoin as a way to pay. I have to buy Filecoin from somewhere. So a crypto exchange is an easy way for me to buy. That's the reason you see these listed on exchanges. That is point number one. And second is, nobody in the world is stopping anybody from speculating on the price of cryptos. So even though BAT is an application coin, it is only supposed to be used in the BAT network. People are buying and selling BAT and trying to make money on the prices. That unfortunately is something nobody can stop. So that is the reason they are being listed, for both the reasons. Hope that answers your question. Then, sure. Now, non-fungible tokens started with CryptoKitties, but today it has moved ahead. And we are having film stars selling graphical images. We are seeing collectibles. So there are some countries like Austria, they have issued, the government has issued postage stamps. You know, we all, in our childhood, we used to collect stamps. I still do. Some of you also may be doing it. So we can today buy this stamp from Austria, and with the stamp, there is a small barcode, QR code. You scan it and you will get an NFT correlating to that postage stamp. So governments are coming out with collectibles also. So NFTs is growing really huge. And my project, we are making human talent into NFTs. So NFTs is, for me, I would say it is the number one use case for the next year. I expect to see a lot of growth in the NFT market. And it is emerging as one of the best kinds of cryptos. Any questions? Okay. Then we have what I consider as the worst kind of crypto, which is algorithmic stablecoin.
There's a question, Rohis, I also am interested in.
Sure. What are your views on REIT? Yeah. So when you talk about real estate NFTs, I think it's another very nice use case, because it would allow you to buy 1 square foot of, say, 1 square foot in a really expensive building in Dubai. So suppose you feel Dubai real estate is going to go up or Bangalore real estate is going to go up. Everybody cannot afford to buy an entire apartment or an entire office. So now people can buy 1 square inch. Of course, as of today, I'm not aware of any REIT NFTs. I know there are REIT funds, but they are registered separately. NFTs, I've not seen them yet, but I expect to see them come up. And I think that's an amazing use case.
Also, one follow-up question on this.
Yeah, Burberry. Yeah.
How do we see the business model of these NFT of real estate for theoretically, let's say, because we'll be buying 1 square feet, right? And with that, people is not going to have the physical possession. There is somebody who has the physical possession, right? And there are costs relating to, let's say, maintenance cost or other costs also relating to that apartment.
Sure.
And there is again that lessee versus own use case also. So how do we handle that in when we price the crypto?
I'll explain. So what happens is, when you buy this kind of a crypto, they appoint a company which is going to take care of the management of that property. So whatever, now say we have all gotten together and bought a building in Dubai. Now that building is lent or rented out to people. So there is a rent income coming. This company will collect the rent income on our behalf, take care of all the expenditure, And then whatever money is left can be reinvested to buy more property or can be distributed to us as a profit also. And that can increase the price of the crypto, or they can issue more crypto against it. So these are the kind of things that have to be discussed when the project is being launched. So like I said, as of today, I have not seen any such project. But whoever does it, they would have to make all these rules and show it to us.
There is one launched like a month back. I'll share a link on the group later. So there is a guy who has launched this already, and there is one interview which he's giving. So
are you talking about the one in India?
No, not in India.
Oh,
it's
okay.
outside India, but I'll share the link.
Please do that, because I would also really like to read about it, but because I think it's a really nice use case.
Because in my view, like coming from a finance background, I see this as a depreciating, like it can give you returns in short term, let's say 5 years. But since it's a building and there is a replacement cost involved later
but
on.
Buildings ka to, I mean, real estate, the value keeps going up over time. So suppose you had bought a house in Pune, for example, where I live 10 years ago, today it's double. See, so real estate appreciates in the long run. So while I get your point that a building has a replacement cost, but that may come 50 or 100 years later. But the real estate value really appreciates. So this makes it easy for us to buy.
So we are actually assuming that land cost is also included in the real estate, not only the building, right?
You are absolutely right. We are assuming the land cost is included.
Okay, got it.
Sure.
Yes, so, hello, Rohit. So yes. I know of a project which is coming up with this same, and it's from India.
For real estate?
Its name is FoCoin, and it's just launching on tomorrow. And there is another project coming up, which is, we're talking about the NFT concept. So its name is Estate Protocol. So both
can
are
you
from
just
India.
share the URLs on the chat? So I'll also have a look at them. Yeah, because it's quite interesting if it's happening in India, because in India, there are a lot of laws around real estate, which make it difficult. So I'd really like to see how they've done it, because like I said, I really like that use case. Yeah, and someone has mentioned another link here that there is a company from Nigeria also doing it. Perfect. That's amazing. So let me just jump on. So algorithmic stablecoin, let me explain what it means. You all know what a stablecoin is. Am I right? A stablecoin is a crypto whose value is pegged to some asset, usually fiat currency, like dollar, euro, yen, and all. So its value remains quite stable. Now, an algorithmic stablecoin does not have anything backing it, but the algorithm maintains the stability. So let me give you an example. So let us say today that new stablecoin is launched and the price is $1 and there are total 100 coins. So what is the total market capitalization? 100 into 1. So $100 is the market cap. Now, for some reason, the price shoots up to $2 because a lot of people are buying. The algorithm will automatically take the coins which are in your wallet and make them half. So your 100 coins will now become 50 because the value has become 2. And when you do 50 into 2, it is still $100. So depending upon the price, the number of coins in your wallet keep changing up and down so that the overall value remains the same. But like I said, I think this is the worst possible use case because almost all the algorithmic stable coins I've seen, they have failed because somebody or the other finds a bug in the technology and the value then crashes. Let's see how it goes in the future. But as of right now, I'm absolutely not convinced with it. Is that clear? Any questions on this? Okay. I hope all of you are able to hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Then we have governance coins. What do we mean by governance coins? They are used for voting. So Uniswap is a very popular platform. It's a decentralized exchange where people can go and swap between Ethereum tokens. But who votes on how the Uniswap project should move in future are the people who own the Uniswap governance token. So Uniswap doesn't have its own fuel token, which you need to pay transaction fee. No. But if you want to be part of the governance of it, then you can buy Uniswap and do your voting. Honestly speaking, such kind of tokens should not increase much in value because they're not really giving you too many economic benefits. So it's primarily for people who are closely related to the project to have the voting rights. So those are called governance tokens. Then there is another category, which is one of the best, which is the native of public blockchains. So for Ethereum, ETH is the native. For Cardano, ADA is the native. For Solana, SOL is the native. So they are the native cryptos of a public blockchain, and they are used to pay all the transaction fee. So when you want to create new tokens on that platform, you will pay in the native. When you want to transfer, you will pay in the native. So for Binance chain, it is BNB. So that is what we mean by public blockchain natives. Any questions? Okay. Then we have asset-backed tokens, where coffee, tea, spices, fiat currency, anything is there to back the token. Classic example being stable coins like Tether. They come into this category. And then we have lending, borrowing cryptos, which enable people to quickly lend and borrow money. So one option is you will go to the crypto exchange and do the lending, borrowing. Second option is you can go to platforms like Aave. So if you have done yesterday's homework, you would have come across this platform in the DeFi. They are specifically for lending, borrowing, and that is the final 11th category of cryptos. Clear? Any questions? Now let me ask a question. Who would regulate these? So who logically should regulate ready money? You can type in your answers or you can say it out.
The central bank?
Absolutely correct. Ready money, central bank. Who would regulate open blockchain token? Actually, nobody, because it is under one country. So that country already regulates it. So each country need not. What about privacy coins? Who would do that? Again, central bank, because these are also used as money. Application coin, who would regulate this? Ideally, no one, because these are not meant for public use. They are meant for use inside a project. So for example, somebody I think mentioned here about loyalty points. Have any of you ever earned loyalty points?
Yes, Rohit.
Who regulates loyalty points? Nobody, because you're not supposed to. Because loyalty points are a part and parcel of a business's transactions with its customers. So application coins can also come under a category where they're only being used between certain customers and a platform. So ideally, nobody should regulate them. Security tokens, who would do this?
Security regulators.
Absolutely correct. So in India, it could be a SEBI. In the US, it could be SEC. Absolutely correct. What about NFT? Any idea? So depending upon the NFT, intellectual property regulators. If it's a copyright, then the copyright registrar or trademark or patents, they would come in. What about algorithmic stablecoins?
Again, security regulator, right?
No, I would say central bank. Because they are trying to be used as money. When you look at stable coins, their use case is to be used for money, to buy and sell stuff. So according to me, they should come under the central bank.
But isn't it like high frequency trading, algorithmic stable?
But it is not a security. So if it is not a security, then the securities commission cannot come in.
Okay.
Security has to represent that ownership of something. And because algorithmic stablecoins don't give you any ownership rights, so I would say they would come under the central bank. Mm-hmm. Governance token, again, nobody, because it is only for voting. Within an organization or a project, it has got no other economic value. Public blockchain natives logically, again, should not come under anyone. They are again privately being used on a particular platform. Asset-backed token depends upon the asset. So if you are tokenizing real estate, then the real estate regulator comes into the picture. If you are tokenizing gold, then the commodity regulator comes in. So for all these, there are already regulators in the country. So in India, we have a commodities regulator, which happens to be SEBI, as well as the securities regulator. Asset-backed tokens can come under them. And lending, borrowing, logically, again, comes under central bank.
Yeah. Shouldn't this governance token come under corporate laws? Because these are kind of putting power to the stakeholders, right?
If the blockchain project is registered as a company, then yes. But most blockchain projects are not registered as companies. In fact, you may be surprised to know Ethereum, which is like hundreds of billions of dollars. Do you know it is not a company? If you go to their website, there is no company name. Ethereum is simply a blockchain which is running. There is no company which owns or controls it. There is only one non-profit based in Switzerland which maintains the website and organizes some stuff. But no company runs Ethereum. It is a blockchain on its own. So the corporate law cannot really govern it unless it's registered as a company. Is that clear?
Yes, Rose.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Now, very briefly, I'll tell you that in the crypto market, there are about 8-10 ways of making money. One is called airdrops. Whenever a new crypto starts, they give some free to the people. You can get that free just by retweeting and clicking few buttons here and there. You can earn free crypto. That's the best. And I would recommend always do it. I mean, no harm getting free crypto. You get to learn something new and you get free cryptos. Then you have affiliate programs where if you promote somebody else's crypto, they give you commissions. You have bug bounties. So if you find a bug or a security vulnerability, you can earn huge amounts of money, and these could go into millions of dollars. But of course, you need to be expert at hacking penetration testing. Then we have sites like CoinMarketCap, which have learn crypto, earn crypto, which means you go learn about a crypto, watch a few videos, answer a few questions, and immediately you will get free crypto. Amazing.
Why is that?
Pardon?
Why do they give that?
They want to promote their crypto. They want people to learn about it. So this is an incentive that if you learn about my crypto, I will give you something free. It's a very small amount. So it is again like a way of promoting their crypto. Then we have HODL, which is hold on for dear life, which basically means you buy and keep for the long run. So somebody who may have bought Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything in the past, say few years ago, today they could make a huge profit. Then we have dividends. You'll be surprised to know, but certain cryptos give dividends like KU coin. So there's an exchange in, I think, Korea, if I'm not mistaken. And every day, whatever income they earn, 50% of that is given to their token holders as a dividend daily basis. So if you invest in their crypto, you can actually earn dividends every day, which is amazing. Then we have staking. I told you, you can just block up your crypto in a wallet. You are doing validation of transactions, you earn money for that. So that's staking, again, a good concept. Then you could do day trading, which is the absolute worst thing in the world to do. I would never advise you to do it. You will lose all your hair and you will lose all your sanity because it's an extremely stressful job. Crypto is falling up and down all the time and it runs 24/7. So you have no concept of a holiday if you're a day trader. But some people still do it and some of them do make money. Then lending crypto, I've already explained to you, it's really simple. Go to the exchange, buy the crypto, hold it there, and you can earn money just by keeping your crypto there. As of today, for example, for USDT, it's about 14% per annum. This is an excellent rate of return. Of course, if the crypto exchange shuts down, your money is gone. And finally, you could provide liquidity. So you could go to platforms like Uniswap. And there, you can create liquidity pools. And whenever people use it, you can earn money for it. So these are the different ways in which you can profit in the crypto industry. Any questions? All clear?
Of course, I have a question on this liquidity one. So if you have to become part of liquidity pool, so first, how do you go there? Do you have to like stake some of your tokens?
Yes,
or...
you have to, yes. So to create the pool, you need to have those tokens.
So like yesterday, I was reading about Aave lending pool. So let's say if we have to join that, so I simply go, which token do I have to? Do I have to convert to their native tokens first, or can I directly deposit others?
Personally, I have not used Aave. I use Uniswap. So there you can choose which crypto you want to create liquidity pools for. And all the Ethereum tokens are available. ERC20 are available.
Okay.
Similarly, you have similar platforms for Binance and other blockchains also. So Uniswap is only for Ethereum, but for others also, you will find platforms like this. Okay. Now, let us go to the services. Now, this part is important for you to understand that what all happens in the crypto world. It is not just about cryptocurrencies. There are also a lot of service providers. So first is automated liquidity protocol. So when you are buying and selling crypto from an exchange, the crypto has its own method of liquidity. So people are there to do it. But people like you and me can go to places like Uniswap and create our own liquidity pools. And we call that concept as automated liquidity protocols. Then we have blockchain as a service. So suppose you want to set up a node of a blockchain, you don't have to do all the technical work by yourself. There are people there, you can go click buttons and they will set up the node for you. So for example, Microsoft has the cloud service, which is called Azure. Now you could go there, click a few buttons and set up an Ethereum node. So that is what we call as blockchain as a service. So far, any questions? Okay. Then we have consortium blockchains where private companies, banks or enterprises come together and create a blockchain for themselves. So the data is not available to the world. So it is not called a public blockchain. But because multiple organizations have come together, we don't call it private, we call it a consortium blockchain. So for many years, I was actually working in this area with 37 banks. And all the blockchains we create there is what we call consortium blockchain. Then we have DAO, or decentralized autonomous organization. So that is a very interesting DeFi solution where people come together, pool the money, and then vote on how that money should be invested. And we call it autonomous because all the voters take the decision and then the DAO invests the money based on that. And decentralized because everybody has a vote depending upon how much of the DAO they own. And now Wyoming in the US has allowed DAOs to get automatically registered as companies also. So DAOs are again very, very popular today. Any questions? Can you just say a yes, no, so I know all of you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, awesome.
There is
Somebody
a
said,
question in the chat.
yes. Can we say that Corda and Hyperledger fall under consortium blockchain? Yes. Corda is again, Hyperledger Fabric is against software, but yes, it is very common for enterprises to use Hyperledger Fabric or Corda to create consortium blockchains. But Corda in itself is not a blockchain, it's only a software. Hyperledger is not a blockchain, it's only the software. You can use it to create your own consortium blockchain. Hope that answers your question. Then we have exchanges, as we have discussed, centralized, where there is some entity, they will give you a username, password, do your KYC. Easy to use. Then there is decentralized, like Uniswap, no need for username, password, no registration. You can directly swap cryptos. So that is another service. Faucet. Faucet is a really cool thing. It gives you free crypto. Nowadays, you don't find them, but when crypto was very new, you could even get Bitcoin free. So when Bitcoin first was traded, it was 1,309 Bitcoin for $1. Can you imagine how cheap it used to be? It was not even 1 cent. It was like 1/100th of a cent maybe. It was really cheap. At that time, there were sites which would give you free Bitcoin, real actual Bitcoin, not testo, real Bitcoin, just to get you to learn how to use it. Today, there are not too many faucets available, but that's the meaning of a faucet. It keeps dripping and giving small amounts of crypto for free. Clear? Any questions? Okay. You can just keep typing yes, no, so I know that everyone's able to understand what I'm saying. So can you just punch in a yes? Okay. Then we have full node operators. So people like me, we like certain projects. So we want to contribute to the project, but we don't want to do mining because that takes too much of computational power and we don't want to get into that business. So we can run a full node which keeps all the data. So other nodes can keep picking up data from us. So we spend a little bit of money every month and just maintain full nodes. And then there are people who do it as a profession, or maybe they run their own wallets. So those are called full node operators. They like the crypto and they are just participating in the maintenance of that crypto. And I mean, you can do it for a very nominal amount of money. It doesn't cost much to run a full node. It costs a lot if you are going to do mining, but running the nodes is not expensive. And you can even do it on your laptop. Then we have liquidity providers. So people who are holding a large amount of a crypto and then providing liquidity either on an exchange, centralized or decentralized. As a profession, how do they make money out of it? No, we don't make money. So most of us don't make money out of full nodes, but there are some people who may be running a wallet and then they may be charging commission every time you use the wallet. So there they are making money and they need to maintain the full node. But otherwise, many of the full node operators don't earn any money. And I'm a classic example. I don't get paid for that. Then we have miners and mining pools. So when Bitcoin started, you could mine on a laptop. Today, you need really powerful computers. So even miners come together as groups and called mining pools, and they do the mining together. So instead of competing with each other, they collaborate and share the revenue. Then we have mixers. Now, these are very, very shady. And their job is to basically hide the transaction flow. So suppose some criminal has put money. Somebody else now who gets the token from the criminal, they can be identified on the blockchain. So the mixer will take the money and then make hundreds of very tiny transactions. So suppose you give the mixer 10 Bitcoin. He will then make 20,000 transactions of very tiny amounts to random addresses, and that transaction flow will keep happening, and finally your money will come back to you and they will take a commission. So this enables you to hide from the law enforcement. So mixers are usually considered to do illegal work. They are very important in the money laundering world. And please remember, a lot of crypto is still used in the criminal world. That's why mixers come in, and they make really good money, and sometimes they run away with your money also. So you have to be really careful dealing with them. Any questions? Okay. Then we have oracles. So, I explained to you when we're talking about that insurance use case, that how do we get outside real world data into the blockchain, and how do we send data from the blockchain to the outside world? And that is where an oracle comes in. Oracles can be hardware or software based. They can be inbound or outbound. So another example could be, suppose there is a ship moving with a container, and we are supposed to monitor that at any given point of time, the temperature inside the container is at a fixed thing. Otherwise, the food will get spoiled. So there are tiny IoT devices which are constantly monitoring the temperature and sending it out. And that can go into a blockchain also. So even they can function as oracle or data service providers. And finally, of course, we have wallets. We have discussed that in detail. You hold your crypto using addresses, public-private keys. Put together, we call those wallets. So there are many people providing wallet services. There are software wallets and there are hardware wallets. And different people are providing that as a service or product. Any questions? Is it all clear? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So now I'm going to stop the video here and again reconnect in 2 minutes so that we don't lose the recording. So all of you, please give me a minute and we'll log back again.